The smoke still rose from the broken buildings as Commander Zextal stepped through the ruins. His massive metal boots crushed pieces of glass and stone beneath him. The Titan warrior stood 12 feet tall, covered in dark blue armor that gleamed, even in the dim light. His red eyes scanned the empty streets of what used to be Colony Station Bravo-7. 3 days ago. This place had been full of life. Human families lived here, worked here, raised their children here. Now it looked like a graveyard. The Korthok raiders had come fast and hard, giving the humans barely enough time to run. Most had escaped on the evacuation ships, but some had not been so lucky. Zextal moved slowly through the wreckage with his team. Lieutenant Krikstar walked to his left, a smaller but equally deadly Titan warrior. Chance, Sergeant Volthan covered their right side, his weapon ready for any surprise attacks. They had come here to look for survivors, and to make sure no Korthok soldiers were hiding in the ruins. The silence felt heavy. No voices, no music, no sounds of normal life. Only the wind blowing through broken windows and the crunch of debris under their feet. Zexal's sensors kept sweeping back and forth, looking for any sign of movement or heat signatures. They had found nothing but empty buildings and scattered belongings. They walked past a small park where human children used to play. The swings moved slowly in the breeze, their chains creaking softly. A toy spaceship lay on its side in the dirt, forgotten in the rush to escape. Volthan kicked at it with his boot, sending it rolling across the ground. "Nothing here, Commander," Krikstar said through their communication system. His voice sounded flat and bored. "The humans got away clean. We should head back to the ship." Zextal nodded, but did not answer right away. Something felt wrong about this place. His warrior instincts told him they were missing something important. He had been fighting for over 200 years. He had learned to trust those feelings. They moved deeper into the residential area. Here, the damage was worse. Some buildings had collapsed completely, while others stood like broken teeth. Against the sky, personal items were scattered everywhere. Pictures of human families, clothes, books, kitchen tools, all the small things that made a house a home. As they walked, Zexal's sensors picked up a faint reading. It was weak, almost too weak to notice, but it was there. A biosignature coming from somewhere nearby. He raised his hand and his team stopped immediately. "What is it, Commander?" Volthan asked, raising his weapon. "Life signs," Zextal replied. Quietly, very small, very weak. "This way." He followed the signal through the rubble, stepping carefully over fallen beams and chunks of concrete. The reading got stronger as they moved toward what looked like the remains of a housing complex. Most of the building had come down, but part of the ground floor was still intact. The signal was coming from inside. Zextal knelt down and began moving pieces of metal and stone out of the way. His armor gave him incredible strength, and he could lift things that would take 10 humans to move. Krikstar and Volthan helped him, though they both looked confused about what they were doing. "Commander, if there are survivors, we should call for a human rescue team," Krikstar said. "We are warriors, not medics." "The nearest human ship is 6 hours away," Zextal replied, not stopping his work. "Whatever's in there might not have." 6 hours. As they cleared away more debris, they found it. Hidden beneath a collapsed wall was a small shelter made from a cargo container. It was dented and scratched, but it had held together when everything else fell down. The biosignature was definitely coming from inside. Zextal found the container's door and carefully pried it open. The metal groaned as it bent, but it gave way to his strength. Inside, the container was dark and cramped. Someone had lined it with blankets and had put in some food and water. It was a hiding place, built by people who knew danger was coming, and there, in the back corner, wrapped in a torn blanket, was a human baby. The infant was tiny, maybe 6 months old. He had dark hair and pale skin, and his eyes were closed. For a moment, Zextal thought they were too late. But then the baby moved slightly and made a small sound. "By the sacred armor," Volthan whispered, "it's just a child." Sklay reached into the container and found a piece of paper next to the baby. The writing was shaky, written in a hurry. He read it aloud to his team. "Please, save our son Jake. We couldn't escape in time. His father is Dr. Peter Kane, colony medical officer. His mother is Dr. Amy Kane, colony engineer. We pray someone finds him before it's too late. The baby opened his eyes then, looking up. At the three massive warriors, any adult human would have been terrified, but Jake just stared with curiosity. His tiny hand reached up toward Zextal's face. "What do we do, Commander?" Crickstar asked. "We cannot care for a human infant. We know nothing about their needs." "We leave him for the human rescue teams," Volyanthan said firmly. "That is the proper procedure." But Zextal did not move. He looked down at the baby, and something strange happened inside his chest. For 200 years, he had been a perfect soldier, followed orders, completed missions, and never let emotions interfere with duty. But now, looking at this helpless child, he felt something he had never experienced before. The baby's parents had trusted that someone would find their son. They'd built this shelter and left their most precious thing inside, hoping that whoever came would have mercy. They had been wrong to trust the Korthok raiders, who would have killed the child without a second thought. But they had been right to trust that someone with honor might come. "Commander?" Crickstar said again. "Your orders?" Next. Reached down and carefully picked up the baby. Jake was so small that he fit easily in the Titan's massive hands. The child did not cry or struggle. Instead, he seemed to relax, as if he knew he was finally safe. "We take him with us," Zextal said quietly. "Commander, that is against all regulations," Volthan protested. "We cannot bring an alien infant aboard our ship. The High Commander will never allow it." "Then we will deal with the High Commander when the time comes," Zextal replied. He began walking back toward their landing craft, holding Jake carefully against his chest. "But sir, we don't know how to care for a human child," Crickstar said, following his commander. "What if we hurt him by accident? What if he becomes sick? What if he dies?" Zextal stopped walking and turned to face his soldiers. "Then we will learn," he said simply.
"Oh.
"This child's parents died protecting him. They trusted that someone would save him. I will not betray that trust." As they walked back through the ruins, Jake made soft baby sounds and moved his tiny hands. He seemed fascinated by Zextal's armor, touching the smooth metal with his fingers. The baby showed no fear, only curiosity about his strange new protector. Volthan shook his head as they reached their ship. "The crew is going to think we have lost our minds," he muttered. "Perhaps we have," Zextal replied, looking down at Jake's peaceful face. "But some things are more important than following rules." As their ship lifted off from the dead colony, Zextal held the baby close and wondered what he had gotten himself into. He was a warrior, not a caregiver. But when Jake looked up at him with trusting eyes, the Titan commander knew he had made the right choice. Sometimes, being strong meant more than just winning battles. Sometimes it meant protecting those who could not protect themselves. The doors of the Titan mothership Ascendant Dawn slid open with a deep rumble. Commander Zextal walked through them, carrying baby Jake against his chest. The child had slept during most of the flight back to the ship, but now his eyes were wide open, looking at everything around him. The main hangar bay was enormous, big enough to hold 20 smaller ships. Hundreds of Titan warriors worked here, loading supplies and maintaining equipment. When they saw their commander carrying a tiny human baby, everything stopped. Tools dropped to the floor. Conversations ended mid-sentence. Every eye in the hangar turned to stare at the strange sight. Crickstar and Volthan walked behind their commander, both looking uncomfortable. They could hear the whispers starting already. Titan warriors were not supposed to show weakness, and many would see caring. For an alien child as exactly that, Commander Zextal, a deep voice called out, "What? Report to the bridge immediately." The voice belonged to High Commander Morgeth, speaking through the ship's communication system. As Zextal had expected this summons, word traveled fast on a Titan warship. And someone had already told the High Commander about the baby. Jake made a small sound and reached up to touch Zextal's face. The baby's tiny fingers traced the edge of the Titan's helmet, completely unafraid of the massive warrior. Holding him, several nearby soldiers stopped their work to watch, amazed by the child's fearless behavior. Sir, perhaps I should take the infant to the medical bay first, Crickstar suggested quietly. Dr. Yelanera could examine him while you speak with the High Commander. Oh, Zexal replied firmly. He stays with me. The walk to the bridge felt longer than usual. Every corridor they passed through filled with curious stares. Some Titans looked disgusted, as if the baby were some kind of disease. Others seemed confused, unable to understand why their respected commander would bring an alien child aboard their sacred ship. But a few, Zexal noticed, looked at Jake with something that might have been wonder. The baby was so small, so helpless. Yet he showed no fear of beings that could crush him without thinking. There was something about his innocent trust that even hardened warriors found remarkable. The bridge doors opened to reveal High Commander Morgoth, waiting with his arms crossed. He was even larger than Zexal, standing nearly 14 feet tall. His armor was black with gold trim, marking his high rank. His red eyes glowed with anger as he stared at the baby in Zexal's arms. "Explain yourself, Commander Morgoth," said coldly. "Why have you brought this alien creature aboard my ship?" "His name is Jake," Zexal replied. "His parents died protecting him. I found him alone in the ruins." "That does not answer my question," the High Commander snapped. "There are proper procedures for dealing with alien survivors. You should have contacted human authorities and left the creature for them to collect." Jake chose that moment to start crying. The sound was sharp and loud in the quiet bridge. Several officers looked annoyed by the noise, but Zex thought gently, rocked the baby, making soft sounds until Jake calmed down. "See," Morgoth said, pointing at the child. "It disrupts ship operations. It has no place here among warriors." "He is just a baby," Zexal said quietly. "He needs food, warmth, and protection. Nothing more. Nothing more." Morgoth laughed harshly. "When you know what will happen when the Galactic Council learns we have taken an alien child? Do you understand the diplomatic problems this will cause? Titans do not adopt the offspring of other species. We never have, and we never will." Dr. Yelanara entered the bridge carrying a medical scanner. She was smaller than the male warriors, but her silver armor marked her as the ship's chief medical officer. She approached Zextel carefully. "Commander, may I examine the child?" she asked. "I need to check his health and determine his immediate needs." Zexel nodded and allowed the doctor to run her scanner over Jake. The baby watched the blinking lights with fascination, trying to grab the device with his tiny hands. "Interesting," Dr. Yelanara said after a few minutes. "The infant appears healthy, though slightly malnourished. His age is approximately 6 months by human standards. But there is something unusual about his brain activity." "What do you mean?" Zextal asked. "His neural patterns show remarkable adaptability. Being around our technology seems to stimulate his development in unexpected ways. I have never seen anything like it in human children." High Commander Morgoth waved his hand dismissively. "I do not care about the creature's brain patterns. I want it off my ship immediately. Contact the nearest human vessel and arrange for transfer." "Sir, with respect that may not be possible," Dr. Yelanara said carefully. "The child shows signs of severe attachment to Commander Zexthal. Separating them now could cause serious psychological trauma." "Trauma?" Morgoth looked amazed. "Or concerned about the feelings of an alien infant?" Before the doctor could answer, Jake started crying again. This time, the sound was different. It was not just hunger or discomfort, but real distress. His small body shook as tears ran down his face. The crying got louder and more desperate by the second. Zexthal immediately knelt down and spoke to the baby in a gentle voice. "It is all right, Jake. You are safe. No one will hurt you." The moment Jake heard Zexel's voice, he stopped crying and reached toward the commander. When Zexel picked him up, the baby immediately calmed down, making soft, happy sounds. Doctor Yelanara watched this with great interest. "As I said, High Commander, the attachment is quite strong. The child's stress levels spiked dramatically when separated from the commander, but returned to normal in his presence." "This is ridiculous," Morgoth said, but his voice was less certain than before. "We are warriors, not nursemaids." What will the other ships think when they learn the crew of the Ascendant Dawn is caring for a human baby? Over the next few days, Jake began to change life aboard the ship in ways no one expected. Zexal had to learn quickly how to care for a human infant. He studied medical files about human children, learned to prepare nutrition formula, and even modified his quarters to make them safe for a curious baby. The ship's food processors had to be reprogrammed to create human baby food. The environmental systems were adjusted to maintain the temperature Jake needed. A small sleeping area was built next to Zexal's bed, complete with safety barriers to keep the baby from falling. At first, most of the crew avoided Jake completely. But babies have a way of drawing attention, even from the most hardened warriors. When Jake laughed at something, heads turned. When he made cute baby sounds, tough soldiers found themselves smiling despite their efforts not to. Jake seemed fascinated by everything around him. He would stare at the blinking lights on control panels for long periods. He tried to grab anything within reach, especially the shiny parts of Titan armor. When warriors walked by, he would wave his tiny hands at them as if trying to say hello, slowly. Some of the crew began to warm up to the baby. Engineer DreadWalker made Jake a small toy spaceship out of spare parts. Weapons specialist Nextskill created a mobile that hung over Jake's sleeping area. Tiny metal shapes that moved and made soft sounds. The biggest surprise came when Jake started trying to communicate. At 6 months old, human babies usually only made simple sounds, but Jake seemed to be trying to copy the electronic tones that Titans used to talk to their computers. Dr. Yelinara was amazed by his rapid development. It is as if exposure to our technology is accelerating his learning, she told Zexal during one of their regular checkups. His brain is adapting to process information in ways that normal humans cannot. High Commander Morgith remained opposed to keeping Jake aboard the ship, but he could not deny the facts. The baby was healthy, happy, and showing no signs of the problems he had predicted. More importantly, Commander Zexal had not let his new responsibilities interfere with his duties. If anything, he seemed more focused and determined than before. The real test came when Jake got sick with a minor fever. Human children often got sick, and their parents usually knew what to do, but none of the Titans had any experience with human childhood illnesses. Jake cried for hours, and nothing seemed to help. Zexal paced his quarters, holding the baby and trying everything he could think of. Ta-da! The medical scanner showed the fever. But Dr. Yelinara was not sure how to treat a human child safely. Finally, in desperation, Zexal contacted a human medical station and asked for help. The human doctor was surprised to be talking to a Titan warrior about baby care, but she gave clear instructions for treating Jake's fever. When Jake finally stopped crying and fell asleep peacefully in Zexal's arms, the commander realized something important. Taking care of this baby was not making him weaker or less of a warrior. It was teaching him new kinds of strength he had never known existed. The next morning, High Commander Morgith came to Zexal's quarters. He stood in the doorway, watching as the commander fed Jake his morning bottle. The baby looked up at both warriors with bright, curious eyes. "The council has been asking questions," Morgith said quietly. "They know about the child." "You tell them?" Zexal asked. Morgith was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I will tell them that Commander Zexal rescued a survivor and is caring for him until proper arrangements can be made." It was not exactly approval, but it was. Not in order to give Jake away either. 2 months had passed since Jake came aboard the Ascendant Dawn. The baby was now 8 months old and learning to crawl. He moved around Zexal's quarters like a tiny explorer, investigating everything he could reach. The commander had to put safety barriers everywhere to keep Jake from getting into dangerous areas. Jake had grown stronger and more curious with each passing day. He no longer cried when other Titan warriors came near. Instead, he would smile and wave his small hands at them. Some of the crew had even started visiting Zexal's quarters, just to see what the baby was doing. But their peaceful routine was about to end. The communication system in Zexal's quarters buzzed with an urgent message. High Commander Morgith's voice filled the room, and he did not sound happy. All senior officers report to the main conference room immediately. We have visitors from the Galactic Council. Zextal looked down at Jake, who was sitting on the floor playing with a toy spaceship that engineer Dractor had made for him. The baby looked up at his protector with trusting eyes, as if he could sense that something important was happening. "Come, Jake," Zextal said gently, picking up the child. "We must go meet some people." The main conference room was the largest meeting space on the ship. When Zextal arrived carrying Jake, he saw that it was full of people. High Commander Morgeth sat at the head of the table, looking grim. Dr. Yelinara was there, along with several other senior officers, but the visitors were what caught Zextal's attention. Ambassador Nelterra stood near the main screen, her diplomatic robes marking her as a representative of the Titan government. Next to her were 3 humans in official uniforms. One of them was a woman with kind eyes who kept looking at Jake. With professional interest, Commander Zextal, Ambassador Nelterra, said formally, "I am here on behalf of the Galactic Council. We need to discuss the situation with the human child you have been caring for." Jake made a happy sound when he heard voices and looked around the room with curiosity. He was not afraid of the strangers, but he stayed close to Zextal's chest. "This is Dr. Lisa Martinez," the ambassador continued, gesturing to the human woman. "She is a specialist in child welfare and interspecies adoption law. She is here to evaluate the child's well-being and determine the best course of action." Dr. Martinez stepped forward with a gentle smile. "Hello, Jake," she said softly. "You've grown since the last reports I received." Jake stared at the human woman with interest. She looked more like him than the Titans did, with the same kind of skin and hair. But when she reached out to touch him, Jake pulled back against Zextal's armor. "As you can see," Dr. Martinez said to the room, "the child has formed a strong attachment to Commander Zextal. This is not uncommon in cases where infants are rescued by caregivers of different species. The question," Ambassador Nelterra said, "is whether this arrangement is in the best interests of the child or the galactic community. Titans have never adopted alien children before. There are laws and procedures that must be followed." High Commander Morgeth spoke up. "The Council is concerned about the precedent this sets. If Titans start taking in alien children, it could complicate our relationships with other species." Dr. Yelinara cleared her throat. "If I may, Ambassador, I have been monitoring Jake's development closely. His progress has been remarkable. His exposure to Titan technology seems to be enhancing his cognitive abilities in ways we have never seen before." "What do you mean?" Dr. Martinez asked with interest. "The child can operate simple computer interfaces by touch alone. He seems to understand our communication systems intuitively. His learning rate is far beyond that of typical human infants." Jake chose that moment to reach toward a control panel near Zextal's chair. When his tiny finger touched the surface, the panel lit up with soft colors. The baby laughed with delight and touched it again, making the colors change. The humans in the room looked amazed. Dr. Martinez took out a scanner and ran it over Jake. "His neural activity is incredible," she said quietly. "I've never seen patterns like this in a human child." "Which brings us to an important point," Ambassador Nelterra said. "The child's unique development makes him valuable to both human and Titan science. The Council believes he should be studied properly, in a controlled environment." As Zextal felt his anger rising, Jake is not a laboratory specimen. He is a child who needs love and care, not experiments. No one is suggesting experiments, Dr. Martinez said quickly. "But the ambassador is right that Jake's situation is unprecedented. We need to consider what is best for him in the long term." Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flashed, and the voice of the communications officer filled the room. "All hands to battle stations. Korthok raiders approaching. Multiple ships detected. This is not a drill." High Commander Morgeth stood immediately. "Ambassador, Doctor, you will need to go to the secure areas of the ship. All senior officers, report to your stations." The room erupted into controlled chaos as everyone moved toward their assigned positions. In the confusion, Dr. Martinez approached Zextal. "Commander, I should take Jake to safety," she said, reaching for the baby. But Jake had other ideas. When the human woman tried to take him, he started crying loudly and clung to Zexel's armor. His small hands gripped the metal plates so tightly that Dr. Martinez could not pull him away without hurting him. "It's all right, Jake," Zexthal said, trying to calm the baby. But Jake continued to cry, his face red with distress. "He's terrified," Dr. Martinez said with concern. "His stress levels must be through the ceiling." The ship shook as the first enemy weapons hit their shields. Jake's crying got louder, and nothing anyone did seemed to help. Finally, Zexthal made a decision that shocked everyone. "I'm taking him to the bridge with me," he announced. "Commander, that is against all regulations," High Commander Morgoth protested. "The bridge is no place for a child during battle. He's more frightened away from me than he would be in danger with me," Zexthal replied firmly. "I will not abandon him now." Dr. Martinez looked uncertain. "Commander, I understand your bond with Jake, but surely his safety must come first." Zexthal looked down at Jake, who had stopped crying the moment he heard that he would stay with his protector. The baby's trust in him was absolute, even in the face of danger. Dr. Zexel said quietly, "What is safety without love? Is survival without someone who cares whether you live or die? This child has already lost his parents. I will not let him lose his protector too." The ship shook again, more violently this time. Through the speakers they could hear weapons fire and shouted orders. The battle was getting worse. Ambassador Neltara stepped forward. "Commander, your dedication to the child is admirable, but you have duties to your ship and crew. Surely those responsibilities come first." Zexthal stood tall, holding Jake close. "Ambassador, for 200 years I have served without question. I have followed every order, completed every mission, sacrificed everything for duty. But some things are more important than following rules." He looked around the room at all, the faces watching him. "This child chose to trust me when he had no reason to. His parents trusted me to save him when they could not. That trust means more to me than any regulation or tradition." Jake made a soft sound and touched Zexel's face with his tiny hand. The gesture was so innocent and loving that even Ambassador Neltara seemed moved by it. "Very well, Commander," High Commander Morgoth said finally. "But if you bring the child to the bridge, he is your responsibility completely." "I will not risk ship operations to protect him." "Understood, sir," Zexthal replied. As they headed toward the bridge, Dr. Martinez walked beside them. "Commander, I want you to know that I'm not trying to take Jake away from you out of cruelty. I can see how much you both care for each other. But there are laws and procedures that exist to protect children." "I understand," Dr. Zexthal said. "But laws made by people who have never held a crying baby in the middle of the night, who have never seen a child's first smile, who have never felt the responsibility of protecting someone completely helpless. Those laws do not account for love." The bridge doors opened to reveal the chaos of battle. Korthok ships swarmed around them like angry insects. Weapons fire lit up the darkness of space. But Jake, safely held in Zexel's arms, looked around with wonder rather than fear as Zexel took his position at the tactical station. Still holding Jake, Dr. Martinez realized something important. She had come here to evaluate whether a Titan warrior could properly care for a human child. But watching Zexthal work efficiently with one hand while protecting Jake with the other, she began to understand that the answer was not as simple as she had thought. The battle raged on, but Jake never cried again. Safe in his protector's arms, he seemed to know that no harm would come to him. And Zexel, fighting to defend his ship and crew, found that protecting Jake gave him strength rather than weakness. Sometimes the greatest test of character comes not in following rules, in knowing when to break them for something more important. The battle was not going well. Through the bridge's main screen, Zexthal could see more Korthok ships arriving every minute. Their dark vessels moved like predators through space, firing at anything that moved. The Ascendant Dawn shook under their attacks and sparks flew from damaged control panels. Jake sat calmly in Zexel's lap, watching the lights and sounds around him with curious eyes. The baby seemed more interested in the colorful displays than frightened by the chaos of battle. When explosions lit up the screen, Jake would point at them and make happy sounds. Commander Lieutenant Crickstar called from his station. Our shields are down to 60%. We cannot take much more of this beating. High Commander Morgoth stood at the center of the bridge, giving orders to his crew. Turn fire on the lead ship. Target their weapon systems. Dr. Martinez crouched behind a safety barrier, watching Jake with amazement. Despite the noise and danger, the baby was completely calm as long as he was with Zexthal. She had never seen such a strong bond between a child and caregiver. Incoming message from the Korthok fleet, the communications officer announced. Put it through, Morgoth ordered. The screen filled with the ugly face of a Korthok war captain. His skin was gray and scarred, and his yellow eyes burned with hatred. When he spoke, his voice was like grinding metal. Titan fools, the Korthok captain snarled. We know you have something that belongs to us. Give us the human child and his belongings, and we will let you live. Everyone on the bridge turned to stare at Jake, who was still sitting peacefully in Zexthal's arms. The baby looked back at them with innocent eyes, not understanding that he was the reason for all this fighting. The child belongs to no one but himself. High Commander Morgoth replied coldly, and certainly not to you, Korthok scum. The war captain's face twisted with anger. That child carries something very valuable. His parents stole it from us, and now we want it back. Dr. Martinez stood up suddenly. Wait, she said, her voice shaking. You said his belongings? Gah, what belongings? Exal remembered the torn blanket he had found Jake wrapped in. It was still in his quarters, along with the note from the baby's parents. He had not thought it was important, but now he wondered if there was more to it than he had realized. Dr. Yelinara, he called to the ship's medical officer, take Jake to my quarters and examine everything I brought with him from the colony. Look for anything hidden or unusual. Commander, I cannot leave the bridge during battle, she protested. I will go, Dr. Martinez said quickly. I know what to look for. Zexthal hesitated. He did not want to let Jake out of his sight, especially with enemies nearby. But the doctor was right that they needed to find out what the Korthok wanted so badly. Very well, he said, carefully handing Jake to Dr. Martinez. But at the first sign of trouble, bring him back to me immediately. Jake started to fuss when he was separated from Zexal, but Dr. Martinez spoke to him in a gentle voice. It's okay, little one. We're just going to look at your things for a few minutes. As they left the bridge, the battle continued around them. The ship's corridors were filled with running crew members and flashing emergency lights. Dr. Martinez held Jake close and moved as quickly as she could toward Zexthal's quarters. When they arrived, she found the torn blanket that Jake had been wrapped in when Zexthal found him. It looked ordinary, just a piece of soft fabric that had seen better days. But when she examined it more carefully, she felt something small and hard sewn into one corner. What do you have here, Jake? She asked the baby as she carefully cut the stitching. Inside the hidden pocket was a tiny data chip, no bigger than her fingernail. It was the kind used to store huge amounts of information in a very small space. Jake's parents had hidden it in his blanket, knowing that anyone who found their son would also find what they had died protecting. Dr. Martinez looked at the chip with growing excitement. This is what they're after, she said to Jake. But what could be so important that the Korthok would attack a Titan warship to get it? She connected the chip to a portable reader and began looking through its contents. What she found made her gasp with surprise. The chip contained the complete research files of Dr. Peter Kane, Jake's father. He had been working on something incredible, a universal translation system that could allow any species to communicate perfectly with any other species. But it was not just a computer program. It was designed to work with living brains, enhancing their natural ability to understand language. As Dr. Martinez read further, to realize why Jake's development had been so remarkable. The research notes explained that children exposed to the translation technology during their early development would gain the ability to understand and speak any language intuitively. Jake was not just learning from the Titan technology around him. His brain was being prepared to become a living bridge between species. Oh my goodness, Jake, she whispered, looking at the baby with new understanding. You're not just special because of what happened to you. You're special because of what you were born to become. But there was more. The final files explained that Dr. Kane had discovered the Korthok were planning to steal his research and use it to control communication. Between all the species in the galaxy, they wanted to be the only ones who could translate between different groups, giving them power over everyone else. That was why the Korthok had attacked Colony Station, Bravo 7. They were not just raiders looking for supplies, they were after Dr. Kane's work, and they would kill anyone to get it. Dr. Martinez picked up Jake and ran back toward the bridge as fast as she could. The ship was shaking more violently now, and she could hear the sounds of weapons fire getting closer. When she reached the bridge, she found chaos. Shields at 20%. Someone was shouting, "We cannot take another direct hit." Dr. Martinez. Zexthal called out when he saw her return with Jake. "Did you find anything?" She ran to him and quickly explained what she had discovered on the data chip. As she spoke, Jake reached out his little arms toward Zexthal, making distressed sounds. The commander immediately took the baby back, and Jake calmed down instantly. "So the child is the key to his father's research," High Commander Morgoth said grimly. "No wonder the Korthok want him so badly." "It's more than that," Dr. Martinez said urgently. "According to the research, Jake's brain is already adapting to the technology, could become the first person capable of truly universal communication, but only if he grows up in the right environment." Ambassador Neltada, who had been quiet during the battle, suddenly spoke up. "This changes everything. If the child has this potential, he cannot be allowed to fall into Korthok hands under any circumstances." The ship shook again, and alarms blared louder than before. Through the main screen, they could see Korthok boarding ships approaching their hull. "They're trying to board us," Lieutenant Crickstar announced. Multiple breach points detected. Why Commander Morgoth turned to Zexiel. "Commander, take the child and Dr. Martinez to the secure areas of the ship. We will hold them off as long as we can." But Zexthal shook his head. "With respect, sir, if they board the ship, nowhere will be safe. Our only chance is to make sure. They cannot take Jake alive." "What are you suggesting?" Dr. Martinez asked, though she feared she already knew. "We fight," Zexthal said simply. "All of us. Together." Jake's parents died protecting him and his father's work. Will not dishonor their sacrifice by hiding while enemies try to take what they gave their lives to preserve. Jake looked up at his protector with trusting eyes, completely unaware of the danger around them. In his innocent face, everyone on the bridge could see the future that Dr. Kane had dreamed of. A future where all species could understand each other perfectly. Where communication could replace conflict. But that future would only be possible if they could protect Jake from those who would use his gift for evil purposes. "Then we fight. Together," High Commander Morgoth declared, "for the child, for his father's dream, and for the hope of a better galaxy." As Korthok soldiers began cutting through the ship's hull, Zexthal held Jake close and prepared for the battle of his life. He had saved this child from the ruins of a dead colony, but now he would have to save him from something much worse. The future of interspecies communication. Perhaps the peace of the entire galaxy rested in the tiny hands of a baby who trusted him completely. Zexthal would not let that trust be betrayed. The boarding alarm sounded, and the real fight began. The sound of metal being cut echoed through the ship as Korthok soldiers forced their way inside. Zexthal held Jake close while everyone on the bridge prepared for battle. The baby seemed to sense the tension around him and made soft worried sounds. "Bridge security. Report High Commander Morgoth," called into his communicator. "Multiple breaches on decks for 6 and 8, came the reply. "Enemy soldiers moving toward the bridge. We are holding them back, but there are too many." "Doctor." Martinez crouched behind a console, her face pale with fear. She had never been in a real battle before, and the thought of armed Korthok soldiers terrified her. But when she looked at Jake in Zexel's arms, she felt a strange calmness. The baby's innocent trust in his protector reminded her that some things were worth fighting for. "Commander," she said to Zextol, "there might be another way." According to Dr. Kane's research, Jake's brain is already adapting to multiple communication systems. What if we could use that somehow? Before Zexthal could answer, the bridge doors exploded inward. Smoke filled the room as Korthok soldiers poured through the opening. They were smaller than Titans, but moved fast and carried powerful weapons. Their gray skin was covered with battle scars, and their yellow eyes burned with hatred. "Surrender the human child," their leader shouted, "and we will make your deaths quick." High Commander Morgoth stepped forward, his massive frame blocking their path to Jake. "You will have to go through all of us first." The battle erupted in seconds. Titan warriors were incredibly strong and tough, but the Korthok had numbers. And surprise on their side? Weapons fire filled the bridge as both sides fought desperately. Zexthal found himself trapped behind his command station, holding Jake and trying to stay out of the crossfire. The baby was crying now, frightened by the loud noises and flashing lights. But even in his fear, Jake clung to Zexthal's armor and refused to let go. "It's all right, little one," Zexthal whispered. "I will not let them hurt you." Dr. Martinez crawled toward them, staying low to avoid the weapons fire. "Commander, I have an idea." The research notes mention that Jake responds to specific sound frequencies. "What if we could use the ship's communication system to calm him down?" "What good would that do?" Zexthal asked, ducking as an energy blast flew over their heads. "If Jake calms down completely, he might be able to access his enhanced abilities." Dr. Kane's notes suggest that extreme, emotional states can trigger breakthrough moments in children with his modifications. It was a desperate plan, but they were. In a desperate situation, Zexthal reached for the communication controls with one hand while holding Jake with the other. Dr. Martinez helped him access the ship's audio systems. "What frequency should we try?" he asked. "Start with the same tones that Titan computers use for status updates." Jake has always been fascinated by those sounds. Sculf programmed the ship's speakers to produce a soft, rhythmic series of electronic tones. The sounds were barely audible over the battle noise, but Jake heard them immediately. His crying stopped, and he looked around with sudden alertness. Something amazing happened then. Jake began making sounds back at the speakers, but they were not normal baby sounds. They were perfect copies of the electronic tones, as if he was trying to talk to the computer. "Incredible," Dr. Martinez breathed. "He's actually communicating with the ship's systems." The battle continued around them, but Jake seemed completely focused on the sounds coming from the speakers. His tiny hands moved in the air as if he was conducting music that only he could hear. Suddenly, every screen on the bridge lit up with new information. The ship's computers began displaying detailed scans of the Korthok soldiers, showing their exact positions, weapons, and even their heart rates. Jake had somehow connected with the ship's sensors and was sharing information that could help the Titans fight back. "How is this possible?" Commander Morgoth asked, using the new information to direct his warriors more effectively. "Jake is not just learning from our technology," Dr. Martinez explained excitedly. "He's becoming part of it." His father's research was more advanced than anyone realized. With Jake's help, the tide of battle began to turn. The Titans could see exactly where their enemies were hiding and anticipate their attacks. "We're not giving up easily." Their leader pushed forward, determined to reach the baby at any cost. "Give us the child," the Korthok captain snarled, pointing his weapon directly at Zexthal. "His abilities belong to us now." "Jake belongs to no one," Zexthal replied firmly, standing up with the baby in his arms. "He is a free being who will choose his own path." The Korthok captain laughed harshly. "A baby cannot choose anything, but we can choose what to do with his gifts." As the captain raised his weapon, something unexpected happened. Jake looked directly at the Korthok soldier and made a series of complex sounds. They were not human words or Titan electronic tones, but something completely new. The captain stopped moving, his face showing confusion. Other Korthok soldiers also hesitated, as if they were hearing something they could not understand but somehow felt was important. "What is the child doing?" Ambassador Nelterra asked in amazement. Dr. Martinez watched Jake with growing wonder. "I think he's trying to communicate with them, not just with words, but with something deeper." His father's research mentioned that true universal communication might involve emotional understanding, not just language. Jake continued making his strange new sounds, and something remarkable began to happen. The anger in the Korthok soldiers' faces started to fade. They looked confused, then curious, then almost sad. The captain lowered his weapon slowly. What is this feeling? He asked, his voice no longer harsh but uncertain. Jake made more sounds, and this time everyone on the bridge could sense what he was trying to say. It was not words but emotions and images that appeared directly in their minds. They saw Jake's parents hiding their baby and sacrificing themselves to save him. They felt the love that Zexal had shown the child, the trust that Jake had given in return. But most importantly, they felt Jake's simple, innocent wish that everyone could just be friends. The Korthok captain staggered backward, his weapon falling from nerveless fingers. I remember having a child once, he said quietly, before the wars, before the hatred. I had forgotten what it felt like to protect something innocent. Other Korthok soldiers were also lowering their weapons, looking at each other with confusion, and something that might have been shame. Jake's pure emotional communication was cutting through years of anger and violence, reminding them of who they used to be. This is impossible, one of the Korthok soldiers whispered. A baby cannot do this. But he is doing it, Dr. Martinez said softly. This is what Dr. Kane dreamed of. Not just translation between languages, but understanding between hearts. Fighting stopped completely as both sides stared at the baby who had somehow brought peace to a battlefield, with nothing but innocent love. Jake looked around at all the faces watching him and made a happy sound, as if he was pleased that everyone had stopped being angry. High Commander Morgoth stepped forward carefully. Captain, he said to the Korthok leader, your people do not have to be our enemies. This child has shown us that understanding is possible between any species. The Korthok captain looked at Jake for a long moment, then at his own soldiers. We came here to steal and destroy, he said slowly. But this child has shown us something we thought was lost forever. Hope. He turned to his soldiers. They leave now, and we tell our fleet that the human child is under Titan protection. Anyone who tries to harm him will answer to us. As the Korthok soldiers filed out of the bridge, their captain stopped and looked back at Jake one more time. Protect him well, Titan. He may be the future that all our species need. After they left, the bridge was quiet, except for Jake's happy babbling. He seemed pleased with himself, as if he knew he had accomplished something important. 6 months later, Jake celebrated his second birthday aboard the Ascendant Dawn. The party was attended by representatives from dozens of species, all of whom had heard about the baby, who could communicate with anyone through pure emotion and understanding. Zexal watched proudly as Jake played with gifts from across the galaxy. The child was walking now and could speak simple words in several languages. But more importantly, he had become a symbol of hope for peaceful cooperation between all species. Dr. Martinez had stayed aboard the ship to study Jake's development and help establish the new Galactic Communication Institute. She had become like a second parent to Jake, working closely with Zexal to give the child the best possible care. He's going to change everything, isn't he? She said to Zexal, as they watched Jake try to stack building blocks with some young Titan cadets. He already has, Zexal replied. The question now is what kind of galaxy we will build for him to grow up in. Jake looked up at his protector and smiled, then went back to playing with his friends. He was just a normal child in many ways, but his gift for bringing out the best in others had already started healing wounds that had festered for centuries. The abandoned baby who had been found in a box had become the bridge that connected worlds, proving that sometimes the smallest actions can have the biggest consequences.